Welcome back to the Building Bigger Lives podcast. I'm Kathryn Peterson here with my co-host Michael Regan. And today we're going to dig into a topic that's a little bit different, but definitely a hot topic. And we're going to have you ask some questions to yourself. So we're going to talk a little bit about AI and your role with AI and how you feel about AI. And we're going to just give you a whole bunch of things to think about. So this might be a good episode to have a pen and piece of paper ready to go. So with that, I'm going to bring Michael in. Thanks so much for being here.
Yeah, Catherine, you brought a great idea to the table. I'm excited to unpack it because many of my clients over the last, 12, 13 years have done a role reflection journal with me. It's an exercise I'm very fond of. I tend to introduce it somewhere in the late fourth quarter as a way to capture some deeper thoughts from the year we've just had. And I've been doing it for a long time. But you threw a twist at it, and I'm really excited to share it with our audience, which is, now that we live in a world where AI is maybe changing the way in which we think about things, whether it's the creativity we have or the things we're willing to try with it, or maybe even the work we can do because of it. You had suggested, well, what if we tried to mash those up and see if some of those really great questions you take us through have a different context when we ask them through the lens of AI as a tool in that mix. So I'm excited to do that. And so I'm just gonna kick one off your way and let you play with this idea. You've experimented with AI. You've certainly, followed our friend Ken Perry who said, hey, just download ChatGPT and start playing with it. Just get comfortable with it. What are some of the lessons you've learned over the last year using chat or using an AI tool like Copilot? What would you say are some of the lessons you've learned?
I think the biggest one is there's so much that I don't know. And everyone's a beginner, but I think because there's so many things, I'm definitely a beginner just because there's so much you can use it for. So I think we don't totally understand its capacity. So I think that that's a big lesson for me is just how much it can do. And the problem stops like that where I get restrained is in my own mind of I have to remember, oh, I can plug this in to AI. Let's see what they think of it. So I think it's training my brain to get there more than anything else.
So when you think about how you've used it then and trained your brain to do that, have you had any accomplishments that you're proud of so far that it's allowed you to find information that you wouldn't have found or apply for some level of productivity that you would not have previously
Mhm.
used? What are you proud of?
Yeah, so lately I've been using it to help with the summaries of our podcast and just say, hey, I'm posting this to YouTube. Can you give me a sample? And then I, of course, edit it and adjust it. But I asked over the last few days, I've been kind of digging into it a little bit more and said, hey, what are some ways to increase engagement? And it gave some good ideas that I haven't even brought up to you yet. So I'm working on those and digging into those a little bit. So that's kind of exciting. I might have brought this up in a previous podcast, but I got into a crisis where I needed to bring food to an event. And my brain was just because at the last minute, the person who was going to bring the food, the restaurant called and said, sorry, we can't do it. And it was like an hour before. So I got into chat and I was like, hey, I need to provide lunch for 20 people in about an hour. I can hit the store, but I don't have time for prep. What do I do? And it said, okay, what about this? What about this? And planned a whole menu and a shopping list and gave me the few tasks I needed to do. And that way, instead of stressing about it for 30 minutes of my 1 hour time, I had a really quick, precise list of what I
Mm.
needed to do.
So that's a really great example and very practical. I think most people could
Mm.
relate to that. Um, has anything really surprised you as you've used AI? Has anything surprised you in a way that maybe you hadn't anticipated?
I would say maybe not quite yet, just because I'm just surprised at all the capabilities that it has, and there's just so many things that I think my mind is blown, and I don't even have expectations because I know it's so big. I think what's really fascinating is people creating their own essentially chat GPTs where they say, okay, I want one that really just focuses on this or that. And I think there's a bunch of power in those. I wouldn't call them proprietary, but like very specific like sources that'll just focus in on one specific thing. So I think that's pretty exciting. I also really liked my regional manager brought us to an exercise where we plugged in like some goals and vision, and it plugged out like a almost like a day in the life of, hey, what would my life look like if these goals were in place, that you could really look at and see your daily schedule in order to make certain goals. So that was fascinating. So I think there's a lot of uses that we just haven't even gotten there yet.
Yeah, that I would say that reconciles with one of the things that really surprised me. I think my first resistance when this concept maybe a couple of years ago was becoming reality was my resistance was, oh, well, this is going to take all of our human creativity and park it. We're just going to, ask questions, get answers, and I didn't understand yet what would happen. But in fact, I think it's increasing some of our creativity because what you just described and experiences I've had is AI has access to all of the information. So really the creativity now is in our ability to ask really great questions. If you can ask really great questions, it's going to give you really great answers. And it can give you options that either you wouldn't have thought of, or maybe in combinations you wouldn't have put together that allow you to then react with that. And so much like, I like to reference music from time to time. It's a lot like having someone in the studio that has the ability to riff on song ideas and then you play off of those until something happens. AI is like a companion that allows you to, in my opinion now, be more creative because you're really forced to think through, okay, well, how would I ask that differently? What would I do now that I know that information with that information? So many options exist. And so I'm less afraid of it stifling creativity. I think as time's gone on, I'm more excited about the creativity it
Mhm.
creates.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that there's like I would say for our audience, the moments to reach out to it are when you're like, oh, I'm really stuck on this idea and I don't know who to ask. That's a time when you can sometimes plug something in and it can pop out some ideas for you to start with that can just at least launch you over that little hurdle that you have. And I don't think people
Mm.
always think about that for AI, but it can help because we can get in our head a lot of like, oh gosh, is this, I don't know. So it can just kind of be something that's more of they can help you bounce off things a little bit if you don't have that person there. Because sometimes we don't have a meeting with our manager, we don't have a mastermind group that day that we can go to. So it's like, I need an answer now. So
Yeah,
that's a
that
great use.
That makes a lot of sense because as I talk with clients and a lot of the context of these client conversations are one-on-ones, and what I find often is that as a coach, I am sometimes the outlet they have because they live in a pretty small world. I mean, maybe they work with a team or maybe
Mhm.
they've got a few people, but and so I'm regularly encouraging them to do exactly what you said is let's expand the capacity that like they might ask me an opinion and I'd say, well, I'm happy to give you the opinion, but why don't we run that through ChatGPT? Then we get the universe of information that's out there instead of one guy's opinion. And let's spend our energy reacting to what did it tell us. One of the things that's brought me a lot of joy and energy in using AI over the last 6 months is I've decided to let it start taking notes during my client calls. And of course, we have to give permission. I think even, you said, hey, I have to tell it it's okay. And I've had a few questions along the way of, hey, what's it recording? What are we doing? But when I show them the transcript or the summary or the next steps takeaways that I get from it, most people have agreed that wow, that allowed our coaching call to be a lot more engaged because they didn't see me, grabbing a keyboard or looking down at the table typing where you're passively listening, you're paying
Mhm.
attention, but more for the purpose of getting the note instead of I really want to hear what you're saying. I want to see the inflection in your face. I want to understand the struggle you're having. I'm letting AI take all those notes. And Catherine, I'm telling you, every single call, most of my calls are about 30 minutes. Every call, I get a transcript within 2 to 3 minutes. I review it while it's fresh, and it's telling me things that we just talked about that I've already lost because our human brains get attached to something in that call that
Mhm.
we were excited about, but we weren't paying attention to the other stuff. And sure enough, in that other stuff was a really important action item. So I feel like it's elevating my game as a coach to be able to capture that. And I love
Mhm.
that you're using it as an example that Patrick may have shared with you guys of maybe even as a tool to explore, hey, how could you take your goals and break it down into better plans? Those are exciting to me.
And a few other questions for our audience to ask themselves are things like, how can I use AI to prep my day, to prep my week, to prep my month? How can I use AI to decide what disciplines are the most important in my day, or how to plan my day if I have too many things on my calendar? So those are kind of I want to give our audience a whole bunch of different things to start to ask themselves so that they can be ready to say, hey, I don't need to approach this with fear. I need to approach this with creativity and lean in and just say, hey, what can I do to make sure that I'm using it to the best of my ability so that I'm really focused on what I do best every day and I can spend the majority of my time doing that.
Yeah, that's really great, and I'm glad you're pushing for that because I think if our audience sees this episode as one that is a little more tactical and might allow them to think through that, we could ask them to think through, what's that one thing that you've been trying to accomplish this year that if you used AI might help you be able to close that gap and get that thing done. There's so many opportunities for it to help us. It doesn't, you got to look at it just in the way you described it. Think of it as like a co-pilot, not to steal Microsoft's branding around their AI, but that's a great brand name. It really does allow you to bounce things off of it to get some so think about all the times where you're doing work, whether it's prepping for your day or executing on your list of things to do or trying to get things wrapped up. I mean, you use that example of I've got this lunch in an hour. I mean, think about the times when you've said, oh, I wish I had someone to help me, or I wish I had the answer. I would just do it. AI gives you an outlet for that now in a way that we've never had before. And you might be able to accomplish that one big thing you've been trying to do a lot more effectively, if not efficiently, by just typing in some really great questions into your chat GPT.
Yeah, and one of my favorites is you're typing this, ask me 20 questions about my business so that you can help me make Instagram posts, so that you can help me organize my day, so that you can help me, so that you're getting better outputs by your inputs and you don't have to come up with the answers and questions. It's going to ask you the questions that it wants to know so that you make sure you get back better feedback.
So good, and let's use a practical example that comes up all the time. You and I are in a business where scripting is often a technique that we use to get comfortable in making our calls or having our appointments or doing our presentations because we know there are common questions and common objections that we deal
Mhm.
with, and scripting just helps us feel prepared. So don't, if our audience is listening, don't think of scripting as some sort of script we are reading. Scripting is more the practice and the preparation around things that we normally hear. As a mortgage lender, um, a common question is going to be, "What's your lowest rate?" Well, we know that, so let's be prepared for how we want to answer that question. And so when I think about the ways in which you might be able to use it, one of the things I hear often in a coaching call is, yeah, I got this email and I spent an hour trying to figure out how to respond to it. Very common. Hear it all the time because some people just struggle with how do I communicate what I want to say in a way that won't make somebody mad or won't be too lengthy. AI is your friend. Let it come up with that script for your email. You may not use it verbatim. You might be inspired by it to say, oh, gosh, okay, I might change a few things here and there, but give it an opportunity to shorten that up and turn that hour that you were waiting into 10 minutes and hit send and move along with your
Mhm.
day.
Well, and the other piece that I thought was really interesting that someone brought up to me was you have to look at it backwards. So we've always been write, edit, do your thing, right?
Oh,
Well,
okay.
now it's get send your question, get it back, then edit. So edit has turned into the very last step. So you always have to do
Hmm.
that edit piece. So it's kind of flipped the script a little bit of what you're getting isn't a final product, and you shouldn't expect that. But you can also send it a draft email and say, hey, I want to make this more persuasive, or I want to make this sound less mean. Because then it has a voice to work with and it will learn your voice after enough time too. So remember, you
Absolutely.
can input it as well and say, hey, here's some samples of prior emails I've written so that you can figure out my voice a little bit as it relates to my podcast, because my voice at the podcast is going to be different than my voice at work, right? So just getting those things delineated and figuring that out for your business can be good. But there's another question I want to make sure people ask themselves is what's your biggest fear around AI? So, and I don't think we have to discuss it today because I'm still thinking through this, but I think that's really good for people to at least just think about a little bit as it relates to their business, let's say, because there's lots and lots of things that could come up. But I think if you're thinking about that, sometimes you go, yeah, wait, if my skill is really connecting with people, I don't have to be afraid. Or if my skill is if my skill is only running worksheets, maybe I need to be afraid and I need to create some other skills. So what other skills can I create that will make me less worried for my future as it relates to AI? Things like that just to think about.
Really good. Really good. Yeah, and again, to stay in the tactical lane with some of those, you may be looking at the skills that you need in order to perform your job, and maybe there's a litany of them. Let's say, just for illustration purposes, there's 10 major skills you need. Well, 5 of them may fall into your natural style. The other 5, you do them because you have to do them, but they're not your natural style. If
Yeah.
you're a lender who loves relationships, calculating income might not be your favorite thing to do. Well, how could AI help you with that so that maybe you could stay in that lane you love more, even though that skill is necessary to do your job? Maybe it plays a creative role. Maybe you love giving presentations, but putting them together is not your favorite thing to do. Let AI build your PowerPoint deck or your slide deck that you need. And then, as you said, edit it as you go. It will give you some things that you could do. So these skills, as you referenced, could be skills that already are required to do the job, but now an AI tool allows you to maybe find a new and more creative way to do them. And who knows, maybe even gives you maybe suddenly you become interested in that skill in a way that you weren't before because suddenly you
Mhm.
had a different. I think of this in music, for years and years and years the piano was, a common tool, but somewhere along the way somebody created this synthesized keyboard with these different sounds, and suddenly it's the same, if you looked at it, the same, keys, but you could make all these crazy different sounds with that same keyboard that wasn't possible with the piano. Suddenly, people that were bored or maybe not as excited about piano got very excited about a synthesizer. And I think AI is kind of like that. It might give you a way to take a skill you already have, but maybe don't love, and breathe some new life into it. Maybe that's possible.
And one of the things I've been thinking about as well, so there are people who are really good at starting things. There are really people who are good at the middle, and there are people who are good at finishing, right? So if let's say you're a person who's really bad at starting things and you have a lot of ideas, that's a great place to have AI work for you to say, "Hey, I have this project in my head. Give me 5 first steps that I can just start to get moving," because it can help people with that start. But if you're a person who, likes that middle, it might be that you say or that you get stuck in the middle, "Hey, here's the steps I've already taken. Can you give me 10 more steps or people that I can involve so I can get to the end of this project?" So those are the kind of different things depending on the person that they can maybe plug in where they get stuck, and they can push themselves knowing the weaknesses that they have in their personality to help them push them through a project.
Really good, Catherine. I think if we think about the way you set this up, which is, hey, we've got, lots of exercises. We talked about the role reflection as a
Mhm.
as a journal exercise, and the purpose of that journal is really to get you to think deeply about things that could be very valuable in the plans that you make. AI now can play a role in that. So even as you go through those questions, you could literally let it speak into that too, because it's going to learn your style, as you said. It's going to learn some of the voice that you have, and it may come up with some creative angles that you didn't see. And at the end of the day, we're all looking for things that keep us rejuvenated and keep us excited. We've recently had an interview with a guest that talked about how enthusiasm plays such a powerful role in his ability to deliver as a leader. And he said you can't underestimate the power of enthusiasm. Well, AI might help bring some of that enthusiasm back to a job that you're getting bored with or maybe even tired of, and yet you can't, they still need you and you still need to do great
Mhm.
work. Well,
Mhm.
I'm hoping that's true. Any closing thoughts you have on this combination of great questions and a tool like AI?
So, the purpose of this episode in my mind is I want people to think, sit, spend some time thinking, journaling about, hey, what are some steps I can take in my daily life to incorporate that? What can I do to be less scared about AI? What are some ways creatively, wow, that was difficult, that I can approach AI in my business and my life to make things easier and faster? And just some questions to maybe ask yourself so that you're not holding yourself back. So that's what I'm hoping people take away today.
All right, so Kathryn, we're going to help them out. We're going to land the plane with this. I think you're going to do a great job coming up with a list of some of those questions because I know you're going to use AI along with your own personal ingenuity, and you're going to come up with 5 to 10 really great questions for our audience. And when we publish this episode, we're going to include the link to that list in our show notes so that you, as the audience, if you'd like to participate in Kathryn's inspiration for this episode, you can click that and think through those things, just like she suggested, because it is a great idea to spend some time with your thoughts, get those thoughts down on paper, and have a chance to react to them once you see them. I think that's the beauty of journaling is it gives you a chance to unpack ideas from your head. And sometimes you play with them differently when you see them on paper. I'm hoping that's true. So let's deliver on that for our audience. Let's demonstrate the power of how this works and really the simplicity of it as well, because that's what I hope people take away from this is if you do have some hesitation, you asked that great question. What are you afraid of? Uh, some folks just may be afraid because they don't even know where to start. And a lot of people start using AI almost like they use a Google search engine, and that's okay. You can ask it just random questions and it'll start to give you answers. But what will get exciting, and I hope you won't be afraid of this, is ask it the questions you really want the answers to. You were doing a great job of, give me a list, tell me the 3 things to do. It will really help you see the power of this tool if you'll just play with it. And that's my hope as well, is that not only do you take the time to think through some of Kathryn's challenge to these questions, but then you'll go back into a tool like chat, and I'm using that as a reference because it's the one most people know about. There's lots of different AI tools out there, but play with it. Don't be afraid of it. Find out what it's capable of and be amazed at what you might be able to do now that you've unleashed the power of a tool like it in your life.
And we will be talking about this again. So I think it's a subject that will not go away. So we'll listen back on this episode at one point and giggle. So we'll be back again down the road to discuss this, either with a guest or just with us. So stay tuned for that down the road.
Well, that'll put a wrap then on today. We'll bring this to close. Fun fact, Kathryn, I've named my AI Alan Iverson, the original AI. And if those of you who remember NBA basketball in the 90s, Allen Iverson had a nickname, and his nickname was The Answer. So I feel like I have the coolest AI name ever. Thank you all for joining us again for an episode of Building Bigger Lives. We're always looking for creative ways to bring more value to you in each and every podcast. I'm thankful that you tuned in today. If today's episode was in any way inspiring to you, we hope you'll share it with your audience. We hope you'll let them know that we'd love a subscriber, and we hope you'll find us on Spotify, on Apple, and on YouTube, as well as other podcast platforms of your choice. We'll be back every Wednesday with a new episode. For today, that's a wrap on your role and AI. Thanks.